Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
晚上好 and welcome to this very special edition of The Late Show on this Tuesday, the 18th of March. My name is Darren Lester. I am your host this evening. I teach MFL and I am a head of classics. I am also a regular host here on Teachers Talk Radio. You can join me Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. where I talk about all sorts of cool stuff. But more importantly than me today, I've got my three wonderful guests. I am joined by three fantastic educators who are going to talk to us about the joys of raising attainment and engaging our students in the language classroom. So I am joined by Julian Metcalf, who is head teacher at Dartford Grammar School.
Good evening.
I have got Matt Schofield, who works with the Mandarin Excellence Programme. He's the Mandarin Excellence Programme manager, I believe.
That's right, Darren. Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Perfect. And I have got Beth Fleming, who is a fellow Chinese teacher. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. 大家好.
And I forgot to say where you're from. That's the Macmillan Academy, isn't it, Beth?
Oh, yes, yes.
Perfect. So we are here today, very kindly sponsored by the Mandarin Excellence Programme, to talk about our experiences, but more important, your experiences with the programme, how you've integrated it into school, how it all works. So our focus very much for today will be on Mandarin. We'll take a bit of a pivot into Japanese because, you know, we've got a good reason to. And if you have spoken to me even once in your life, you will know that I'm a big fan of Japanese teaching, so that's going to be fun. But even if you are not a teacher of Asian languages, if you are sitting there thinking, oh, I'm a French teacher, I'm a Spanish teacher, I'm maybe a different Asian language, I'm a Korean teacher, I'm a Vietnamese teacher, then still stay tuned, because I'm hoping that there will be a lot of things that you can take away from our conversation today that you can implement in your own classroom, because that's what we're all about, is raising that attainment and engaging our students. So I think the best place to start, Matt, if you don't mind, would be with you. Could you just give us a bit of background to the Mandarin Excellence Programme? Just let us know kind of what it's all about for anybody who is just starting this journey.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Darren. So the Mandarin Excellence Programme is a programme that began in 2016. It's delivered by the IOE, which is UCL's Faculty of Education Society, and the programme's delivered in partnership with the British Council. There are currently 76 schools participating in the programme, and at the moment in those 76 schools, around 14,000 pupils have participated in the programme through to completing GCSEs or are currently in years 7 to 13 in MEP schools. The programme started, like I said, in 2016. There were 14 schools on the programme in the first year of the programme, with 350 students starting their Mandarin studies in year 7. So it's in its 9th year of delivery. There are pupils participating in this programme across the country, all studying for 8 hours per week. They study for 4 hours on timetable. So 4 hours of curriculum time, and they do 4 hours of homework and self-study. So it's quite a commitment from the students and by the schools to do that. The pupils start in year 7 and they pass through, they're retained on the programme by the schools, and they pass into year 8 through to year 9, completing year 11, completing a GCSE in year 11. And the students sit annual tests at the end of each year, tests that are developed specifically for the programme. We call them hurdle tests, and they progress to year 11 when they sit a GCSE, and then some of those students will continue to study Chinese in the 6th form. And by this summer, there will be 4,000 students who've progressed to completing GCSEs, achieving really excellent results, which we've seen through an independent evaluation of the programme. And the pupils also participate in intensive study. That in year 7 and year 8, that's organised by the schools at school level. But in year 9, the pupils get to go to China. And I think we're going to talk about that a bit more later in the podcast. That's a fantastic opportunity for the students, and they get a lot out of that. And in year 10, the pupils will visit, say, a university that has Chinese studies on its syllabus. And I mean, but in terms of the development of the programme, what's happened over a period of time, there's now a huge bank of resources that have been developed by teachers to be used in the classroom to enable schools to start teaching Mandarin on curriculum. They don't have to be MEP schools to do that. Those resources are openly available to all schools and all teachers. So this year we've got 1,200 pupils who will be going to China in year 9 in the summer.
That's incredible. That is incredible. I mean, I know you said later in the podcast, but let's just pick up on that now. What are the logistics like for organising a trip that big?
Okay, so yeah, first of all, it's not a normal trip. I mean, I think thinking about the logistics and what the organisational side of it, it's not something that a school could perhaps do on their own. We're talking about 1,200 students going from around 60 schools across the country, and they're going to 11 host cities and 18 host universities in China. So it's a bit different, obviously, for us to organise a trip on this scale, working with the British Council to do that, than it would be for a school to organise a trip on their own. There are lots of challenges that the schools also have to face, which you have to face with any trip. But we're very lucky in the fact that the trip's heavily subsidised. So the MEP budget covers more than half of the cost of the flights for the students to get to China. Then once the students are in China, the trip's heavily subsidised and funded by the Centre for Language Education and Cooperation in China, they're a delivery partner essentially, who fund all travel, accommodation and activities and teaching costs for the students while they're in China. That's different to a normal school trip. So a school would normally need to have some kind of school partnership with a school in China to arrange a trip that would be similar to this. There are things that are similar to what schools would have to do. For instance, there are all the things like risk assessments and working on plans and itineraries with the host institutions. But having this partnership with the Centre for Language Education and Cooperation in China means that, and the host institutions hosting the students in China, it takes quite a bit of the burden away from the schools of having to do those things and the things that they'd have to organise themselves. And really, I mean, one of the biggest challenges for the schools is things like getting visas for the students. Visas add an extra layer of complexity to a visit to China than they would to going to a European country where they don't need a visa, and it obviously involves more expense. And it's possible to go to China again now. For some time, obviously, it wasn't because of COVID and so on, but there are some schools and some MEP schools that arrange their own trips to China already. So schools can start to do that themselves a bit more, hopefully now going forward. But this trip is particularly unique.
That's so cool. And from a teaching perspective, for me, the fact that there was the money there to help subsidize it helps a lot, because I've been involved in trying to organize Asian trips before, and it's quite often the expense that puts the parents off specifically. So that's really helpful. And then kind of giving them that that cultural input with the Chinese students, with the host schools, the host families. You can't buy that. That's an amazing opportunity. Julian, if I can turn to you, because in my experience, these kinds of international trips are things that head teachers love, but always makes them a bit shaky.
I tell you what, I would say you're absolutely right, Dan. I take my hat off to Matt, because, organising for me as an English teacher, actually organising a theatre trip to London is enough. So I don't know how Matt manages to coordinate 1,200 students going. But I tell you what, it is a fantastic opportunity for students. We are so privileged, actually, my own school, that we've been involved with the MEP from its very first year onwards. And actually, when you see the impact that trip has on students, it really just is absolutely superb. And it's something we couldn't actually do as a school, given the complexity of visas, given the complexity of visiting China, given the complexity of organising accommodation, the intensive language study out there. We just wouldn't be able to do it. No school will be able to do it. It's just the most fantastic thing.
Yeah, I mean, the students study for 35 hours of their time in China. So they're there for 11 days, and 35 of those 35 hours of language teaching takes place during those 11 days. So they are sat in the classroom for part of this trip, but they do get out and about, and they do get to see the sights and visit lots of nice tourist attractions. Whichever city they go to, it's a fantastic experience. It doesn't matter where they go in China. They're in China. They're immersed in China. Yeah. It's an amazing experience wherever they end up going, whether it's Beijing, Chengdu, Shanghai, Shenyang. All these places are fascinating and interesting for the students.
And they come back, Matt, and the first thing they just say is actually how real it is, which I know sounds really strange, but I think, we're just used to learning languages in a classroom, and, language lessons, of course, give you the nuts and bolts of learning grammar and vocab. But the Excellence Programme, and particularly actually this trip to China, gives them that cultural capital. It gives them that kind of understanding of how language works. It gives them an intercultural understanding. And they just have an experience they would never, ever get otherwise. And it's hugely inclusive as well. I would say, the funding that comes through the MEP is designed to make sure that every single student can afford to get out there, which is, of course, absolutely central to it.
Amazing. So any heads listening, any senior leaders listening who are thinking about it, Julian is saying go for it.
Oh, absolutely, 100%, absolutely go for it. Honestly, there is no better language program. We've tried to copy and emulate it, and we can in other ways internally. I can talk about that a little bit later, maybe. But it really is a superb. We're talking a lot about the trip, which comes now right at the end of year 9. But actually, there are a load of other elements to the MEP as well that just makes a really kind of powerful lived language experience for students over the course of the 4 years or so.
Absolutely. So to round off the trip, because let's be honest, when we're trying to encourage our children to take languages, the trip is a big one. So it is an important thing for us to think about. Beth, from your point of view as the teacher, at the chalk face with these kids, getting them to communicate in Mandarin, how useful do you find the trip in kind of building up that confidence, that self-efficacy, that enthusiasm?
I'd just like to echo everything Julian said there. Really, it's invaluable. Just like as Julian said, when students are there and they're like, wow, this is real. This is a real culture. This is a real country. People really use this language on a day-to-day basis. And just, I think one of the things that I really took away from the trip. So last year was my first time taking part in the MEP trip to China. So we've been on the programme for 4 years at Macmillan. So we're in our 4th year now. We've got year 10 now. So we're about to embark on our 2nd trip to China. We went to Shanghai last year, Beijing this year. Very exciting. And I think, just one of my main takeaways are one of the things that I just valued most about the trip last year was seeing my students really immerse themselves out there, and they're really, you know, I mean, thanks to the wonderful itineraries and things that the MEP and CLEC put together, my students just absolutely immerse themselves in it, and just seeing them grow in confidence. And like, I had students who usually wouldn't even, you know, necessarily contribute a lot in the classroom at home, and they'd be coming up to me and they'd say, "Miss, I just asked a Chinese person, I just said, oh, Tai Guila, because something was too expensive," or, you know, really just getting into it. And a couple of students found or stumbled across somebody who needed a bit of help, so they used something that was on the back of their card that said like Bangzhou War to like get some help for somebody else. And just being so brave. I mean, when I was in year 9, I definitely wouldn't have, you know, had the opportunity to go to China. And some of these students that I took to China last year had never been abroad before, and they just never had that opportunity. So, you know, for their first trip abroad to be halfway across the world, and for them to be out there, living the language, embracing the culture, you know, the cuisine. We had very mixed reviews about all the different food out there, but they gave it a go, and most of them loved it. It was just incredible. It's a brilliant part of the program, definitely, and the students are never going to forget those experiences, which is invaluable, isn't it, really?
That's it. I think it comes back to exactly what Julian said before about cultural capital, doesn't it? About giving our students who would never in a million years have this opportunity, for whatever reason, the opportunity to do it. And then, like you said, Beth, watching them be brave and taking it. I think that's so cool.
It's exactly that. This is what education is about, actually, isn't it? And I have to remind myself of this, actually, as a head teacher, because, you know, the context that inevitably as a head you end up operating in are worrying about staff recruitment and funding and exam results and Ofsted. But none of these things are actually about education. What we're talking about now as educators is seeing the impact of what learning should be about, which is about promoting empathy, about encouraging connectivity, encouraging sort of deep learning, encouraging students to love that process of learning a language and not just worrying about an exam at the end of year 11. And I think this is the brilliance of it. It's so processed focus, and it helps them develop, you know, their attitudes and their aptitudes. And dare I say it, in a world increasingly dominated by AI, I think it encourages their kind of sentience and humanity as well. And I think that's fundamentally important as well.
Yeah. Beth said that students, there's a lot of students who came back and that we've heard from, that they've said it's, and teachers as well have told us for their students, it's been a truly life-changing experience. And just what Beth said about students having never left, that they may not have gone much further than Wales or somewhere in Britain, and then the first time they go overseas on a plane, they go to China. It's a fantastic experience for them.
It really is. It really is. But since it is kind of unfortunately things that we are judged on, let's have a chat about exam results just for a couple of minutes, because we don't want to depress ourselves more than we need to. Matt, I'm going to come to you first, because I read, I'm just checking that I've got this right, that the programme has led to an average 0.5 increase in GCSE grades. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's right. So that's the outcome of the independent evaluation that backs that up. And this is compared to peers who aren't part of the Mandarin Excellence Programme, would also be studying Chinese. So these are students who would normally study for 2 hours per week, 1 to 2 hours per week on curriculum, whereas the MEP students are obviously studying for 4 hours per week on curriculum and doing additional homework. And obviously that has a quite big impact on their attainment, and is one of the biggest factors really in terms of their improvement or their higher grades than their peers.
That's really interesting to me, because when first you said it was the 4 hours contact time and then the homework, my initial reaction was, oh, that's not very much as a language teacher. I was just like, for GCSE I would want 6 hours. But then to think about, you know, that they're making all of that progress on the 4 hours, and then, you know, they have peers who are maybe only getting the 2. I think that really goes to show, how important that curriculum time is, but also how important well-resourced curriculum time is.
Yeah, I mean, but they do start this in year 7 as well.
Yeah.
So normally students in year 7 wouldn't be studying for 4 hours per week. And it is from the very start of their learning journey as part of the MEP. So they go on this journey starting in year 7, and from year 7, they're doing their 4 hours of face-to-face taught Chinese in year 7, and they do the same in year 8, year 9, year 10, all the way through to the end of the program. So by the time they get into year 11, when they would be doing more hours of learning, then it sort of is the right amount of language learning time. But it's this the program stretches the students. They learn more, and it stretches their knowledge about the language and gives them these experiences which have helped to improve that attainment and push them up by this measure, which is an average, of course, an average of half a grade.
Yeah, I see the same sort of thing actually in my context as well. I can only talk sort of specifically about the results here at Dartford, but we have 90 students in each year group, 90 students from year 7 onwards who study Chinese. And 32 of those will do the MEP, the Excellence Programme. So we have 2 groups then that are running in parallel that don't do the MEP programme. And they achieve actually closer to 1 GCSE grade above the students that have done the MEP. And I think it's easy to say, well, yes, it's because they have more teaching. And yes, they are getting kind of more exposure to language. But of course, that means, yes, they're making quicker progress, but that in turn makes them more confident. And that means, therefore, they're enjoying their language learning more, and therefore they're even more motivated to be studying it. And it's one of those things, I think, a rising tide raises all ships. And the more students are doing, the more they really feel that they're learning, and the more motivated they are to carry on working even harder. So it really does have a noticeable difference on those students.
That's amazing. And can I ask, sort of from a timetabling perspective, how do you manage that? How do you manage to make sure that they have enough hours all the way through Key Stage 3 from year 7 upwards, so that then, the 4 hours contact time at Key Stage 4 is enough?
I mean, different schools, I know, talking to head teachers, talking to MEP head teachers, different schools do it in different ways.
Yeah.
The model we go for is we do some after school teaching. So there'll be an evening a week after school where they'll do an intensive study block in their language. And for the teacher, their class teacher that teaches the after school part of that as well, they get some extra release time on their timetable in compensation for doing the after school teaching. But that way, it also just gives us a lot more flexibility doing it then after school as well.
That's really clever. Actually, I that's a really neat solution. I like that because I know quite often when we talk about languages in year 7 and year 8, we do find it quite hard to justify giving the time over. And so actually, Julian, I will say you've kind of become my hero over the past week since I've met you, because to see a head who is so passionate about making sure the languages in his school are succeeding and are getting the curriculum time is amazing. It's really brilliant.
I'm not often called anyone's hero, so I'll take that down. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I suppose we're lucky, and my 2 predecessors as heads actually have always really valued language, so it's something that's got incredibly built into the DNA here at Dartford. And of course, I'm conscious that we are a grammar school, so we have got a selective intake. And of course, that's advantageous when teaching subjects like languages. But I mean, what I would say on the edge of London here, we've got students from a very kind of diverse range of socioeconomic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and some students from some very challenging backgrounds for a grammar school. We've got comparatively high pupil premium numbers for a selective school. But really, I think back in the 90s, the school started looking at the IB diploma in the 6th form, and that encouraged a more international ethos into the school. Back in the 90s, back in the days of school specialism, we became a specialist language college quite early on, and that really drove languages. It drove the European languages. It led the school to introduce Japanese in the late 1990s. And then, of course, the introduction of the MEP really it completely changed our language curriculum model. And we've now got a model where we have 180 students that join us in year 7, 90 study Chinese and 90 study Japanese. And out of that, we run a Japanese Excellence Programme as well as the Mandarin Excellence Programme. And then from year 8 onwards, our students choose a European language, or they can choose Latin as well. And they take both of those subjects through to GCSE. So we're pretty unusual as a secondary school in that all of our students will do 2 languages to GCSE. And of course, because we're an IB diploma school, we've got quite a big co-educational sixth form, 600 students all doing the IB diploma. So all of them are studying a language as well. So language learning is a 7-year journey in the school for all of our students.
That's brilliant. I think that's such a good way to see it. That, you know, it starts in year 13. No, it doesn't. It starts in year 7.
Exactly. Yeah.
It may end in year 13. We hope it doesn't. It may do, but it is that through way, isn't it? Which is really important.
Exactly, and it's really trying to celebrate languages a lot as well. You know, our students come from very diverse backgrounds. We've got 68 different first languages spoken in the school. So we're used to being a very kind of diverse, multicultural environment anyway. And then we look for every opportunity to kind of celebrate languages, to promote languages. And having, you know, a slightly more international curriculum, we use the IB Middle Years programme, really just as a Key Stage 3 framework. And the Middle Years programme, sorry, the IB might not want me to say this, but it's not much more framework, but it gives that kind of philosophy and it gives that international ethos and encourages that global outlook in students, which is of course then really supported by our language curriculum.
Just something that I'd like to add to what we were talking about in terms of the attainment of the students, and Beth might want to say something about this as well. I think in terms of the students that are enrolled on the programme, so they start a learning journey in year 7 that we've talked about, and they know that they're going on this progression. They look forward to going to China in year 9. It's real incentive for them. But there is a real commitment as well from the students to do this. They come in knowing they've got to do these extra hours of learning for Mandarin, and they seem to be really committed to this journey that they're going to go on. And I think that's something that is really key as well. That they are, they're just the students who I've met through the program. A lot of them have been in China, and they see that, like I said, they see that as a real incentive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, that is really key, isn't it? That they know that it's the long journey, that they have these points to look forward to. You know, maybe we have the trip slotted in and they know that's coming. And so initially they have that extrinsic motivation of, oh, I'm going to do these extra hours because I get to go on the trip. But then that extrinsic motivation builds and turns itself into the intrinsic motivation of, I want to get better, I want to do this. You know, Chinese has become part of my learner identity. Yes,
and we've also got a really strong network of excellent Chinese teachers, and Beth is one of those teachers, and they share ideas and good practice, and I mean there's a teacher supply from the IOE, PGCE, which is a Mandarin languages PGCE, and that there is a regular annual supply of Chinese teachers coming through that route to provide teachers to supply schools teaching Chinese and Mandarin Excellence Programme schools, and new schools that have joined the programme who had no previous experience of teaching Mandarin before they became an MEP school. So the number of Mandarin learners has increased as a result of the programme.
Yeah, we've seen exactly that, exactly what Matt's talking about there. You know, again, we benefit from being relatively close to UCL, the Institute of Education, and the London universities in terms of supporting with teacher training placements. But we find there's just a constant stream of people coming into Chinese teaching. You know, there's a lot of talk in the national press about how hard it is to recruit language teachers. Actually, it's I wouldn't say easy. I don't think anything is easy anymore, but it's easier certainly in terms of appointing Chinese teachers, Mandarin teachers who are themselves already motivated by the programme and familiar with the programme.
Just to add to that as well, the IOE, I can't remember if it's linked with the MEP or not, if it's just the IOE, but there's a programme that they run to train teachers to teach them Mandarin, to be able to teach Mandarin up to Key Stage 3 level, like teachers of other subjects. They don't even have to be languages teachers, but just any teachers that are interested in learning some Mandarin to be able to teach the basics to kind of year 7, 8, maybe 9. That's really good as well. And I have shared that with my school, but obviously being quite far away, nobody's signed up just yet. But it would be nice if in the future somebody does, so we can have even more teachers up north as well.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that, Beth. That's always handy for people to know about that. I mean, yeah, we've had teachers who have from other languages who have been through that process and been part of an upskilling course to become Mandarin teachers, like Beth said, up to the end of Key Stage 3. And some of those teachers have been on the China trips in MEP schools now. And yeah, it's great to see that sort of pathway for teachers as well to be able to start to teach some Mandarin.
That was actually what I did. I was able to, but wasn't teaching Japanese in my school at the time. We had a Japanese department, but I wasn't teaching it. But we had a big influx of Chinese students, and nobody who spoke Chinese who could kind of make sure that they were settling in okay, making sure that the parents were happy and all that sort of thing. So the school said, well, Darren, you're sort of not using your Asian languages at the moment. Please go and learn Chinese. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, of course. So I went and I did it was a 6-month upskilling program to be able to teach to Key Stage 3. And I then went on and I took my HSK 6 months after that. So it's, I know that I had a bit of an advantage already coming with not only an Asian language, but an Asian language that uses syllables. And, there's a lot of crossover. So reading and writing was quite easy for me. But I think upskilling is something that a lot of teachers don't really think about. And I think a lot of teachers don't realize how many SKE programs or upskilling programs there are just kind of dotted around. So definitely something to think about if you're wanting to broaden your subject range out.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
What we're talking kind of about teachers then, Beth, because let's be honest, even though, as Julian has said, we are managing to recruit lots of Mandarin teachers, there are not many of us who are non-native Mandarin teachers. So could you just talk us through kind of your journey through like learning Chinese and then qualifying to teach it?
So I studied at Macmillan, where I now work, for secondary school and sixth form. And at that time, we obviously didn't have Chinese. So I studied French and Spanish, mainly Spanish. I stuck with Spanish for GCSE and then did it at A-level as well. And when I got offered a place at university, so I went to Durham. I was the first in my family to go to uni. So it just felt like this massive opportunity. It felt like something really, kind of special. So I thought I really need to make the most of this. And not that there's anything wrong with European languages. I obviously love them. But I was like, I need to do something different, something a bit more exciting. Everybody does Spanish. Let's do something different. So I was looking at the options, and China had always appealed to me. I'd never studied any of the language, but I'd always kind of wanted to go, you know, the Great Wall. I loved Mulan as a kid. So I was like, right, okay, I'll study Chinese. I'll give it a go. So I chose Chinese, went to Durham, absolutely fell in love with it, loved my year abroad, loved China when I was there. I loved the culture, the language, everything about it. And I actually really didn't want to be a teacher at first. I'll be honest. But when I left uni, I wanted to go back to China, and a nice way to do that is to teach English out there. It's quite an accessible way to travel if you're like from the UK and want to teach English. So I taught English in China for a while, kind of dipped my toes in with teaching and thought, this is okay. So then I felt like I was neglecting my Spanish a bit. So then I moved to Spain to teach English there for a year. And while I was there, I was like, right, I think I'm ready to move home now after that year. So I came home, and I was at home, and I didn't really know what I did want to do. And my granddad had always said, Beth, you'd be a great teacher. You've got your languages. Why don't you get into teaching? And I kept brushing it to the side, thinking it wasn't for me. But then, you know, I sat down and I looked at what I wanted out of a job, and I thought, right, I want to be able to use my languages. I want to be able to work in my local area. I want to like be helping people in some way, or making a difference, or feeling like I am. And I thought, you know what, teaching actually ticks all of those boxes. So let's give it a go. So then I became a teaching assistant at my old secondary school at Macmillan for a year to see what teaching would be like. And I really enjoyed it. So I applied for my PGCE and applied to UCL's IOE. Didn't think I'd get a place, actually. I really thought I'd fluffed up the interview with Catherine. So I went home and I was all down in the dumps. I was like, oh, I ruined the interview, but I really loved it there. I really wanted to go. And then I got offered a place. So I was so happy. Went to UCL, did my PGCE. And then it was there that I learned about the Mandarin Excellence Programme. Okay. I'd never heard of it before this point. So at the IOE, everyone kept talking about it, and I didn't really know what it was. But then I learned a little bit about it, and I thought, maybe my old secondary school might be interested in this. And it would be, you know, I'd be more than happy to move home, work there, and teach Mandarin at my old secondary school. I think that'd be great. So I kind of got in touch with them and said, look, I'm doing my PGCE. The IOE has the Mandarin Excellence Programme. Is it something that you think we could maybe start at Macmillan? So
that's
a little bit.
Your inner Mulan there with that bravery.
Yeah, I was quite bold. Didn't know if it was going to pay off, but luckily my head teacher and SLT are on board with it. They've been really supportive since I've started. My whole department as well. I mean, I now work with some of my old teachers, and they're like my line managers and heads of department, which is lovely because I know them really well, and obviously they know me really well. And yeah, so we started the Mandarin Excellence Programme 4 years ago, and I think it's going well so far. I'm really enjoying it. My students are really enthusiastic about it, and I do really think it's making a difference to at least some students' kind of aspirations in Middlesbrough, which is really what's important about it for me, I think.
That's really interesting. I think it is really important because, you know, in Japanese, I talk a lot about how, you know, we have the hook with manga and anime, and all the kids are kind of into that. Chinese doesn't really have that same cultural hook yet. There's no big, Chinese pop culture explosion that's happened. I'm waiting for it. It will come, but it hasn't quite yet. So I think it's amazing that through the Mandarin Excellence Programme, and thank you again to them for sponsoring the show this evening, that you are able to give your students these opportunities, that Julian, you've been able to do the same for yours, who maybe wouldn't, like you, Beth, maybe wouldn't have thought about China otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, again, we're back, always coming back to cultural capital, aren't we? Always coming back to giving our young people, and, you know, us, let's be honest, I'm hoping that we've got some of our, 750 viewers listening, thinking, oh, maybe I'll give Chinese a go. You know, and expanding our own cultural capital as adults, because it applies to us as teachers just as much as it does to our young people.
Yeah.
And then Beth, while we're kind of on teaching, we might as well kind of follow through with this line. How do you find, because I know the MEP offers lots of resources to use in class. And as Matt said at the top of the show, you don't need to be an MEP affiliated school to use those resources. I, in fact, used some in a lesson that I taught this morning. So we're all good. But how do you find it in the classroom with the resources? Do you find them really useful in supporting your teaching?
Yeah, some of them definitely. And I think, that there's it's called MARS, it's the Mandarin, I can't remember.
Mandarin Resources for Schools.
Where's the A? Oh, the MA comes from Mandarin.
MA, yeah.
I do. Slow moment there. Yeah, Mandarin Resources for Schools, MARS. That's the one that's open to everyone. Anyone can access that. And there's loads on there, like lesson plans, projects, worksheets, lots we can use. I use a lot of the homework booklets that other schools have made, so thank you for those. And there's also UCL Extend, which is like, there's a Mandarin Excellence Programme, UCL Extend, for just Mandarin Excellence Programme teachers, but there's lots on there with like previous hurdle tests on there, past papers, things like hurdle test vocab lists, stuff for HSK3 that the students need to do in year 10. And so that's quite useful as well. And then the IOE run 2 training sessions a year for Mandarin Excellence Programme teachers as well. So like CPD and networking sessions. So one's always in the autumn and one's always in the spring. And they're always really helpful and valuable as well.
And the resources on Mars, I mean, Beth mentioned them briefly there. So there are student projects for students in year 7, 8 and 9 that will always be a legacy of the programme as well, that hopefully teachers can use in their classrooms with students of that age, or you could use them, perhaps the year 8 projects for the year 9 students in your school. It doesn't have to be that specific, but they're really, really excellent resources that have been developed for the programme. But yeah, this idea of teachers sharing resources with each other, for each other, is that still runs and runs, I think. And they're some of the best resources that are on Mars.
Yeah. And then there's the forum as well. There's like an email forum that people send resources on as well, which is really good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a bit of the culture of the MEP, actually, isn't it? Because Beth, obviously you're mentioning the 2 training days. I know how much my staff get out from that as well. But I've noticed that within that, there are then a lot of informal networks that have been set up between local kind of clusters of Mandarin teachers. I know we've hosted a number of meetings here that is just getting together with colleagues from other schools and actually sharing approaches and sharing resources. And it's something that's grown very organically, I think, out of the MEP as a network.
Yeah, we have hub schools as well, don't we?
So we have a hub and partner model, which is a national model, largely based on geography, where the partner schools are paired up or grouped together with a more experienced school, which has been probably on the programme from the start. So Dartford are a hub school, and it's just a good way of getting the schools to network. But they break out of those hub and partner models as well and work with other schools, and the teachers build friendships and networks through the teacher training events as well. And like Beth said, through UCL Extend, which is a communication system.
And that's really important, isn't it? I think as teachers, it's nice to be able to talk to, obviously, to all other teachers. We love to share, we love to chat, but to talk to teachers within your same subject, and then within languages, because we all tend to get clumped together within the language or languages that you teach. I think that's really important to build that community and to talk to each other and share resources and just kind of remind each other why we do it. But it's also really generous of the MEP, I think, to host these things and to make all of these things available for free for teachers who are not signed up to the program. I think that goes to that speaks a lot for the aim of the program and for the for what the MEP, what the British Council, what everybody wanted to do with it, and increase that knowledge and understanding Mandarin in the UK. I think that's really important. let us then, because I'm aware that we are running out of time, pivot ever so slightly, Julian. We'll come back to your Japanese because I'm really intrigued by this, and I'm low-key gutted that I did not have the idea first. So do you want to kind of talk us through the birth, I suppose, the genesis of your Japanese Excellence Programme?
Yeah, I guess it kind of happened alongside, obviously, the development of the MEP and our involvement in the MEP, because we made the decision with that all of the students, when they joined us in year 7, would either do Chinese or Japanese, half would do each. Partly, I mean, that decision was made just so students were coming from different language backgrounds. They'd done different languages in primary school, so it just meant they were all starting on something new, and actually something that was really quite exciting to them in case they hadn't had necessarily a hugely positive sort of previous experience with languages. So it was something new, something exciting. The MEP was there, and then we thought, well, if half of the students are studying Japanese, we need to run a sort of companionable JEP program. So, and in fact, I won't go into it, but you'll be pleased to know, Darren, we have a CEP as well, a Classics Excellence Programme.
Hey, amazing.
The JEP literally mirrors the MEP, actually, as students go through the school. So they do the same additional lessons after school that the MEP students do. So we have a similar group of 32 students going through. Unfortunately, it hasn't got the funding behind it that the MEP has. We've had some support from organisations like the Japan Foundation, who've been absolutely fantastic in providing a little bit of support. But we just decided it was something that was important to us as a school. Languages are important to us as a school. If that's a key part of our kind of values, we should be doing this and targeting our resource into that. So really from year 7 onwards, students are doing a similar sort of programme, looking at kind of cultural text, creative expression in year 7, year 8. In year 8, we do a trip supported by the Japanese embassy up to London. We do student meals to help them sort of develop an understanding culturally there. In year 9, we do a trip down to the Rikyo school in Sussex, I think, a Japanese school down there. So there's a day of kind of student integration there. We do a university visit to the Japanese department at Oxford University with students in year 10. So we try and do as much mirroring between the two programs as we can. Unfortunately, there isn't a subsidised trip to Japan. We do run a trip for all of the students open to all of the students that do Japanese actually in year 11, in October of year 11 for students to go. And we do our very best to support sort of pupil premium students that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to go on that trip, but it's not a subsidised trip like the MEP. But we take it right through to finishing both programs with a sort of almost a kind of an American university style graduation event in year 11, which again tries to make it very high profile. We invite special guests down, like Mr. Schofield here has been down a couple of times, and we try and really just sort of celebrate with students what they've achieved, whether on the JEP or the MEP side by side. So it works well. It works well, and so Japanese is as embedded as Chinese is as a language in the school.
That's incredible. See, hero. How, from kind of a nuts and bolts practical point of view, how easy did your MFL staff find it to kind of map the MEP program onto Japanese? Was it a fairly straightforward process for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an exact mapping. We've developed our own JEP program that suits our school curriculum, and really, I'm so fortunate with teachers here. The Japanese department here are absolutely fantastic, really kind of creative, and it's just worked fantastically. Having the two programs running side by side. The challenge, of course, has been to do it without the funding in place. But I think it's doable without the funding in place. But there's no doubt there's a bit more challenge there. You have to think creatively, and I'm fortunate that I've got some very talented, creative thinking language teachers who have found solutions to things, because there is resource out there, isn't there? Whether you're contacting universities or whether you're contacting embassies for that, or whether you're taking students to local restaurants or using your parents or your local community sort of networks, or working with other schools, other schools offering Japanese, for example, to do kind of immersion days with other year groups. So I think things are possible. And the British Council, of course, are always hugely supportive with everything as well. So
that's, yeah, it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant that you can take the idea, take the concept, and move it out to your other languages. I think that's genius. And Matt, from your point of view, it must be kind of heartwarming to know that schools have so appreciated the project and the work that the MEP has done, that they are trying similar things with their other languages.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a real sort of, it feels like it's a bit of a legacy of the programme if schools can do that, and they can take the good practice that we've created as part of the Mandarin Excellence Programme and put that into place in their own, in a different, slightly different context. Like Julian was saying, I mean, the funding might not be there, but there are certain aspects that you could take from the MEP. That doesn't have to be the whole thing. It doesn't have to be the trip, the cost of the trip, something like that. There are other aspects of it that could be used for learning another language.
Yeah, we've tried to do something similar with European languages as well. All the students do a European language from year 8 onwards. So the end of year 9, we try and take every student in year 9 and give them 5 days in sort of their European country, just to give them that sort of immersive experience in the language. And again, the same sort of cultural experience as well. Really building on a lot of what we've learned and stolen from the MEP.
Can I ask Julian, just out of curiosity, you mentioned earlier that all of your students at your school at DGS do 2 GCSEs, 2 language GCSEs.
Right.
Is one of them in an Asian language like Japanese
That's
or
right,
Mandarin,
yeah,
and one
yeah.
in a European language?
That's right. Yeah. So year 7 onwards, they do Chinese or Japanese through to GCSE, and then year 8 onwards, they take either French, German, Spanish, or Latin through to GCSE. And then we offer a couple of additional languages from ab initio basis in the 6th form as well.
Yeah.
Because the IB diploma model obviously is very much got languages at the heart of it.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's a really nice way to split it up, isn't it? To, so that your dual linguists who are going to be good in no matter what combination you have them, they will be able to succeed. But then also your students who maybe find the Asian languages easier or harder than European language, whichever way around it is, they also get that chance to succeed. They can have that experience of both.
Yes, and I think actually, they actually have a very positive experience of both, because it's something that's now so ingrained in the school. We make quite a lot of it with sort of year 5, year 6 students looking around the school, that really, if you're coming to Dartford for your secondary school, we're going to be very language based. And I think we do work quite hard on those subjects, because of course we're a boys' school from year 7 through to year 11. I'm talking in sort of huge gender stereotypes here, but boys are naturally drawn to STEM. And dare I say it, I think as a society, we're naturally drawn to STEM. The most popular undergraduate subject in the country now is computer science. Subjects like English A-level aren't even in the top 10 subjects anymore. So the kind of narrative, if you like, the subjects that students value and a lot of parents tend to be STEM based, if you'll forgive the generalization. So, we work very hard at the performing creative arts and languages and humanities to make sure our curriculum model shows these are really valuable as well. And
that is really important. I mean, we've had that push for STEM in the UK over the past few years, rightly so. STEM is very important.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Not disparaging that, but I do sometimes feel like it has been at the expense of some other things. And so it is nice that kind of as language teachers and people who recognise the importance of languages, we can kind of use systems like the MEP to stay that tide, as it were.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to forget, again, I was saying this a little bit earlier, and I don't want to repeat myself, but we get so focused on exam results, which I get because we are measured like that. But actually, we're trying to prepare young people for a future. We're trying to teach them to be resilient. We're trying to teach them to be empathetic. We're trying to teach them to be communicators. And you learn all of these things from languages more than anything else. I think some students get put off languages because they show what you can't do. I think, if dare I say it, if you're good at maths, you're going to get full marks on every maths test. Whereas languages, you're always going to get something wrong. you can feel quite exposed if you're a young person. So I think it makes learning languages even more important, that you learn to kind of accept that, and you learn to grow from it. And I think, as I said earlier, I think, in a world that is ever more AI dominated, the subjects that teach us to be human first and foremost are going to be more important than ever. And languages are absolutely at the heart of that.
I think you're absolutely right, because you can feel very exposed as an old person, and I always say to my students, it actually doesn't matter how fluent you are in a language, you will still make mistakes, because think about how you speak English, you make mistakes in English. And so I do think that embedding languages in a curriculum is a good way to teach our young people that it's okay to make mistakes, it's natural to make mistakes, and you're going to keep doing it, and so get used to it.
Yeah, I'd go even further down and say, actually, that's why the Excellence Programme is so important, is it's okay. You're not doing an exam to be measured on mistakes. You get to use a language for very real purposes, whether it's exploring cultural texts, whether it's on a cultural visit, where it's communicating with people. And actually, as soon as you start communicating with someone in a language, you realise it doesn't matter if you make a grammatical mistake. Your GCSE French examiner might not like that, but actually the real use of language out on the ground, if you like, in a country, communicating, building trust with people through speaking a language, it doesn't matter. And it's hard for young people to learn that, but it's so important that they do. So key. And we have to model that as adults, of course.
Yeah.
We've got our two schools we do an exchange with from Japan are actually here with us this week. So I managed to, I will say, fumble my way through some Japanese in the kind of welcome ceremony this morning. It was only a sentence or two as well, but it's important that I'm willing to try and speak a language or speak a language.
That's it. And Beth, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I quite often feel like the students always hear their language teachers talking about how important languages are. So to see other teachers trying it out, and then see the heads trying it out, and just trying their best, I think is such a good role model for the kids. It's a good thing for them to encounter.
Yeah, I totally agree. At our school, we always celebrate European Day of Languages, more as a day of languages rather than just a European Day of Languages, because we, like DGS, have a very diverse cohort of students from lots of cultural backgrounds who speak lots of native languages at home. And so we try and celebrate that. And one of the things we've done in the past is we always have assemblies, and we have a weekly broadcast that's shown in tutorial and things. And we did videos of different teachers speaking different languages, and it was like, guess who? But some of them could speak that other language really well. Like we have, some like a native Dutch speaker, things like that. But then other teachers were just reading a sentence in a different language that they'd never spoken before. But it was just a bit of fun. But it's good for the students to see other teachers embracing it and giving it a go. And as well, we were talking earlier about students learning languages, and I think it's important for them to know it's a journey. I think, that making mistakes thing you mentioned earlier. Students are always asking me, oh, Miss, how long does it take you to know Chinese, to be fluent in Chinese? And I always say, I'm still learning, like you. Like, yes, I'm good at Chinese. Yes, I've got a degree in Chinese. Yes, I could go out there and have a conversation in most subjects in Chinese, but there's still things I don't know. I'm still learning. And it's a lifelong learning process. And I think it's important to share that with them as well, so that they get that kind of, I suppose it feeds into their motivation to know that, it's something. And languages can be such a part of like your whole life, can't they? You can watch telly in Chinese, you can listen to music in Chinese, you can read books in Chinese, you can do all sorts with it, with any language. So it's good for them to be aware of that, definitely.
Absolutely.
I think it's giving them the skills to go back to a language later in life, Beth, isn't it?
Definitely.
That kind of process that you can return to, even if it's a completely different language.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're trying to teach young people how to acquire a language and how to then just have the confidence to have a go and speak it.
To have a go.
That's it, because with the best will in the world, no school is going to be able to offer every language. So, we will all have students who might excel in a language that we don't offer, but through the exposure to learning one or two languages to begin with, they can then go and pick that up themselves later on if they want to, which is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Matt, I'm going to come back round to you just to kind of finish off. I could be here all day. This is brilliant. But I was really intrigued by what Beth said about kind of the diversity of her cohort and of her students. Obviously, accessibility and inclusivity is something that, to bring it back round to exams, we think a lot about now in exams. As we're writing the new GCSE, as we're teaching the new GCSE, we are thinking about how we make it inclusive, how we make it accessible. How has the MEP made sure that the stuff that you have offered and the Mandarin Excellence Programme itself is accessible and is inclusive to all learners?
Okay, so first of all, I mean, it's a great opportunity, isn't it, to learn Mandarin through the Mandarin Excellence Programme for all students, but and it gives them exposure to a new language in lots of cases, a different experience. But through the funding for the programme, which is the programme is funded by the Department for Education, and the funding covers the cost of the trip to China for pupils who are eligible for pupil premium, and also there is financial support there for families who may not be able to afford to pay for their children to go on the trip in normal circumstances. So there is some funding there to assist with students from less advantaged backgrounds. I mean, it's always been a target of the program, or an aim of the program, to increase the proportion of disadvantaged pupils on the program. And schools are when they're recruiting the new cohort of students in Year 7, they're thinking of that, and head teachers and teachers are thinking of that as well. And the number of pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds has grown since the start of the program, since the start of the second phase of the program in particular. Yes, but I think it really, in terms of inclusivity and ensuring that everybody has the opportunity to go to China, for all those students who want to go to China, that is really important. And I know it's valued greatly by the schools there, and they really appreciate it. And it means that there are a lot of kids going to China who just wouldn't be able to go otherwise. It gives them this fantastic opportunity. And it's just like we were talking about earlier, it's life-changing, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got students in Year 10 who just want to move there, just want to live there. But one particular Year 10, and I ask her what she wants to do at sixth form. She says Mandarin. I say, what do you want to do at university? Mandarin. What do you want to do after university? I want to live in China. Like, that is her goal now. She just loved it.
And I think this is sort of where we're going with it, isn't it? In terms of sort of the legacy and you know, there are students now. There's this cadre of students who've come through the MEP who want the opportunity. They want to go on with their studies, want to study in sixth form, they want to study at university, they want to go back to China. We got an email from a student last week who started MEP in 2017. He emailed us to say thanks for the opportunity. I'm now studying at a university in China, and none of this would have been possible without the Mandarin Excellence Programme. I mean, when you see things like that, it just makes you think, yes, this is what it's all about. What an amazing thing to happen. And it's just really nice to hear those kinds of stories from students. Just got in contact with us off his own back and emailed the program director.
That's the dream, isn't it? Really, you that's how you know you've made an impact. That's how you know you've made a difference. Yeah,
and I mean, they've got this cadre of students who are improving the UK's China capability. There'll be opportunities for these students and jobs and business, and that having learned the Chinese language gives them those opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have. It gives them opportunities that other students that haven't studied the language won't have. It's just a fascinating language and a fascinating culture to immerse yourself in and learn about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for being here this evening. Thank you once again to the Mandarin Excellence Programme for sponsoring this evening and giving us the opportunity to sit and chat. I could just sit and listen to the three of you all day. This has been brilliant. I am now going to go and look again at the Mandarin Excellence Programme, see what other resources I can steal. see what other bits and bobs I can do. Matt, if we've got any teachers who are now interested in the MEP and want to, like I'm going to go and do a bit of exploring, where can we find the Mandarin Excellence Programme?
So the Mandarin Excellence Programme is available through the Mandarin Excellence Programme web pages, which are at ci.ioe.ac.uk. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful.
That's all right.
The Mandarin Excellence Programme pages are there. The Mandarin resources for schools are also on that website, and you can visit that and there's a search function on there that helps you to find resources on there. And if you just want to know more about the programme in general, just go to the MEP web pages there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, Beth, thank you. I very much appreciated hearing your story today. That was really interesting. It was lovely to hear how Mandarin has impacted your life. That's been so cool.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Can I ask you a quick question before?
Yeah, of course.
Do you speak 9 languages?
Yes.
What are they?
Okay, so I count English. English is my L1, but I still count it anyway. I speak French and German. I speak Dutch, Mandarin, and Japanese. And then I've got 3 classical languages. I've got Latin, Biblical Greek, and Biblical Hebrew.
Wow, that's incredible.
That is very impressive.
Yeah.
Too kind. It's a language teacher cliche, but it's what we tell the kids. When you pick up one, another is easier. And that's kind of why I love Julian's idea of having the children do the stream of an Asian and a European language, because then, you've got a grounding in one of each, so you can pick up others. And I think that's so important. But I quite like being asked questions. I think I should be a guest.
We could go for another hour then and quiz you.
I think so. Matt, thank you for coming and for being so informative about the MEP. I'm so excited to kind of see what could happen next and what the legacy of the MEP is going to be, and how sort of everything that you've done over the past few years is going to expand and just continue to make Mandarin more important in the UK. I think it's been an amazing program. And hopefully it will continue to be an amazing program.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
And Julian, thank you for coming. Very much appreciated. I've loved hearing about your passion for languages within your school. If you've got any jobs going, just drop me a line.
In one of 9 different languages as well. So.
Exactly.
You're very employable. Amazing. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So thank you.
No. Thank you. And of course, thank you to our listeners, our viewers on all of our platforms. The last time the banner popped up, I think we were at 1,000. So I don't know if we have exceeded that. But thank you all for giving up part of your Tuesday evening to be here with us. I will potentially see some of you on Saturday morning if you fancy tuning in at 9 a.m. for my next show. If not, I wish you a very pleasant rest of the evening. Xie. Thank you very much. And Sai Jen. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.